Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Witch's Castle. I am Will Castle, and today, to celebrate the release of Tarkir Dragonstorm, we're looking at Teval again. But this time, we're looking at the one from the main set. We're looking at Teval, Arbiter of Virtue. So, I decided to take this Teval in a dragon-themed direction, trying to basically do dragon shenanigans from the graveyard. I played in the pre-release with the Sultai kit. There was some cool graveyard shenanigans going on there. I got to play with the Omen cards, that are those dragons that shuffle themselves back in if you cast the instant or sorcery side of them. So, admittedly, a lot of this deck is made up of those cards. But also, this deck is fairly cheap to put together. On Moxfield right now, it's running at about $200, which is not cheap, but comparatively to some of the other builds you might be looking at for something with Teval, this one leans little more theme heavy and is a little cheaper than you might be looking at, but we'll see whether or not it packs the punch. I'm hoping it does. Without further ado, let's talk about a big scary green dragon. So, let's read Teval. This Teval is 2, a black, a green, and a blue for a 6/6 spirit dragon with flying and lifelink. It says spells you cast have delve, and whenever you cast a spell, you lose life equal to its mana value. So, obviously, the trade back is there. It has some life links that'll gain you some back. It's evocative of things like Crick, where you're paying life to help reduce the cost of things, except it's in 3 colors. So it's got a lot of broad options. For anyone who doesn't know, Delve makes it so you can exile cards from your graveyard to help pay for the generic costs of cards. So the reason why I thought dragons would be acceptable here is because a lot of dragons have bigger costs. Teval is not necessarily a great example himself, but something else in this deck, the Colossal Grave Reaver, is 6, a black and a green. With Teval, if we have enough cards in our graveyard, this dragon could potentially just be a black and a green. The downside is we would lose 8 life along the way. So this deck, it has ended up being kind of a hybrid of the black-green Witherbloom cards that care about gaining you life and losing you life, kind of doing the back and forth life gain thing, and blue cards with the green that care about instants and sorceries and kind of doing stormy style effects to help gain back some of the life that we're losing. So, in our creatures section, we have a handful of 1-cost creatures that have various things that say gain life on them. Death Greeter, whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we gain a life. Essence Warden, when a creature enters, gain a life. Haywire Might, you can sacrifice it and remove something, and when it dies, you gain 2 life. Jotty Offshoot, there's a couple of redundant effects like this, where it says when a land enters, we gain 1 life. I tried to find as many instances of those as I could to put in the deck, because I was trying to purposefully make it a little bit cheaper of a deck to build. You'll see where the cheapness kind of came into play a little bit later in the deck. But Jotty Offshoot and a handful of various landfall shenanigans will help us kind of accrue some of that life back. After Teval domes us. This is going to be one of those weird commander decks where our commander is costed fairly low, but we'll probably take some time, sandbag a few pieces of interaction, and wait until we're in a position to actually cast something using the Delve. Otherwise, it's just going to kind of hurt us for moderate value. And we're not really looking for moderate value here with our commander. We're really trying to get the big value with the commander itself. Have a handful of newer cards in here from Tarkir itself. Deceptive Frostkite is a 2-mana 1/1 dragon with flying, and it enters as a copy of a creature you control with power 4 or greater, except it's a dragon in addition to its other types. Obviously, the mana cost is 2, but there's going to be situations where you're not going to get to play it like it's a 2-cost card. That doesn't really bug me a whole lot with this particular pile of cards. A lot of the dragons we have in here are actually non-legendary ones, so they're going to be good targets to copy anyway. I think we have maybe 3 or 4 total legendary dragons, but overall, getting an extra copy of one of your dragons for 2 is not too bad, so we ended up putting it in the pile. a handful of 2-cost creatures that have relevant gain life text on them. Galagreeters, Kazandu Nectar Pots, another gain life off of landfall. And Witherbloom Apprentice. This one's going to be really good in this deck. We are not running the Chain of Smog combo in here. Not because it's expensive, quite the contrary. You could put it in here and it would actually probably be really good. It even makes you discard cards, which would objectively still be good for the Teval stuff. But I ended up wanting to lean more with the dragons, and I've put that combo in a bunch of decks that I've played recently, so I just didn't feel like talking about it with this one. I think overall as a combo, the Witherbloom Apprentice and Chain of Smog idea is solid. Teval's wanting you to do something that gains you life anyway, so I think it's solid as an option in a bigger, different deck. This one, not so much. More thematic here. Our 3-cost creatures, we have things like Courser of Crufix, get lands off the top, gain life. We have Jorn, God of Winter in this deck, except it's not Jorn. Anybody who has ever called him Jorn is wrong. It's Yorn, because he's Norse. The J's are silent. Well, not silent, they're pronounced like Yuz. Reflections of Lit Yara, that blue enchantment that lets you copy your creature type spells. It's Lit Yara. The J makes a Y sound. I know that the idea of Jon Snow is funny, but it's a Y. I can't talk. I can barely pronounce half the words in this card game, and in the English language. This one irks me a little bit. But he's in the deck because of the untapping snow permanence thing. A lot of the lands that I decided to put in this deck actually ended up being snow lands coincidentally, and in order to keep the mana base from making this a $400 deck, I ended up trying to find some ways to subvert the fact that a bunch of the duels that we picked entered tapped. And even if you only get one attack off with Jorn, if you can time it right, it still feels like an extra turn. And in the bad scenario where you flip them over and are trying to use Cauldring, don't. There's only lands that this would be able to get. And if you're in a bad enough situation where that's the only thing you can get with this, the creature side would still probably be better anyway, because a body will generally do you more than tap, put a land from your graveyard into play. And that's functionally what this would do if you flip the other side. Depending on the situation, could be good, but I would rely mostly on the Yorn side to get the untapped value. Okay, enough yapping about all of the random miscellaneous boring creatures. You want to see the dragons we have in here. Broodcaller Scourge is another one from the precon. I picked mostly dragons that were either already from the set or came from another Tarkir set. I have one of the Dragon Lords in here that you'll see later. There's one dragon exception. Yeah, there's only one dragon in this deck that did not come from a Tarkir set. Anyway, Broodcaller Scourge is a 7-mana 5/7 that says whenever one or more dragons you control deal combat damage to a player, you may put a permanent card with mana value less than or equal to the damage from your hand onto the battlefield. Yeah, it's a big scary flying dragon, and our commander hurts us when we cast spells, so this guy will be occasionally able to let us dodge that after we've developed this dragon. Because we're, in theory, losing 7 life to cast this for maybe 2 or 3, we really want to be able to get other things into play without paying for them. And admittedly, this deck doesn't lean heavily into Reanimator because it's trying to get rid of the cards in the graveyard. So this kind of effect will put extra stuff into play and help you maintain some value without it hurting too much in the long run. Beledros Witherbloom is the exception to the Tarkir Dragons rule. Admittedly, he's an Elder Dragon, and he technically fits in that regard. But yeah, this is the only dragon in the deck that didn't come out in a Tarkir set here, and that's just because it's good. It makes pests on everybody's upkeep. Yes, the pay 10 life to untap all lands part is a little greedy. you're not going to be spamming this as much in this deck as you would with the other Teval that I built, for instance, because your life's going to be bouncing around a little bit more, but maybe I'm wrong. I haven't really gotten to an exponentially big amount of life with this pile of cardboard, so I could be wrong. It could be totally environmentally based, but I care much more that it provides bodies that will gain you life back, and in an emergency, you can pay 10 life to untap all your lands at instant speed, and there's a couple of flash enablers in here, or flash dragons, and pieces of interaction that'll be helpful for. So this Belladros is more of a life gain outlet and a one-off save yourself kind of thing, unless you're already in a commanding position. In which case, run away with the game. Absolutely. I love big scary graveyard dragon, so he lives here. She lives here. Dragon lives here. A little more to go over super quick. Transcendent Dragon, it's a counter spell stuck to a dragon. That's pretty good. If it has Delve, that makes it better because it'll be an actual factual counter spell stuck to a dragon. We like that. The Omen dragons that I was talking about, Meringue, River Regent, draw 3 cards, then discard a card, put stuff in our graveyard for Delve, has a bounce effect on it as an ETB, which is pretty good. Scavenger Regent has a board wipe built onto it that you have to dump mana into, but it's an X cost, so with Teval, you can dump however much you want into it, and that's pretty good. You will lose life, though. With X spells, if you, let's say X is 5 here, Teval will still deal damage to me equal to the 5 plus whatever its original cost is. So X is 5, the original cost is black, so I'd take 7. When you put a spell on the stack, if it's an X spell, it will assume the mana value of the spell on the stack when Teval is referencing it, so it will still dome you for damage. Otherwise, it wouldn't be balanced, basically. But that's still really, really good, and it shuffles itself back into your deck. So I like that a lot. Omen cards, pretty cool. And then the last dragon I'm going to talk about over here is, of course, Dragon Lord Silumgar. I have lost so many games to this card as a commander because it just yoinks whatever the heck it wants. It enters, you get to steal a creature or a planeswalker. It's a 3/5 with flying at Death Touch. It's removal at least once, pseudo removal at least once, and with Death Touch potentially multiple times piece of removal. And it's just kind of cool and flavorful to put him in the deck. Okay, down in our sorcery section, we've got a couple of notable ones. Pest Infestation's really good for us. It blows up a bunch of artifacts and or enchantments, and then makes twice that many pests that will eventually die and gain us a bunch of life. It's good, blows up things, and makes pests. I don't need to spend that much time talking about it. Very good card. Exsanguinate is, in case of an emergency, it's good. You just need to be able to cushion your life total every now and again. If you're able to murder the entire table with it, great. But I'm mostly using it to gain 5-10 life every now and again to keep myself from dying from all the delve I'm doing. Crux of Fate, board wipe, blow up all dragons, blow up all non-dragons. It's a popular set. You're gonna pick back and forth every now and again. Sometimes you'll need to blow up all dragons and it'll suck, but it'll feel really good to be able to corner case that and get it out of the way. Lie in Wait is actually kind of an underrated one for me personally from the set. It's a green, a black, and a blue to return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. Lie in Wait deals damage equal to that creature's power to target creature. Yeah, that's actually just pretty good. Even if you're only hitting one-off tokens that happen to be bigger tokens, like I return a 4/4 from my graveyard to my hand and kill somebody's construct, that still feels pretty good, actually. It gives me some graveyard interaction and on the board interaction. It's much better than I thought it would be. I like it. And then our ramp package is, in the sorceries at least, it's the 4 2-cost ramp spells. And specifically, I looked for the ones that didn't say basic land, like 3 Visits, Nature's Lore, and Farseek all say search for a blah blah blah. That's because I just wanted to have mana fixing provided, good color fixing, and I ended up putting a bunch of dual lands in this deck that are multiple land types. In the instance section, this is not the most interesting, like, suite of interaction. A lot of it is just interaction. Sacrifice creatures to draw cards, bring creatures back if they would die, removal that gains life. This part of the deck feels much more spell slingy in what it's trying to attempt to do. They're all cards that gain life, draw cards, or kill something. It's borderline a pseudo storm deck because of some of the other mechanics that we saw earlier with the Magecraft kind of stuff going on. Plumb the Forbidden. This card's really good for all of those pests that we create. We can sacrifice a bunch of them, and they functionally will net us back the life that this card makes us lose. We get to copy it a bunch, get some good card draw. A+. I'm happy with it. Tend the Pests. Being able to sacrifice a creature and make a bunch of pests is really good, in tandem with things like the Malakir Rebirth that makes it so that creature comes back. Functionally, it's 3 mana, make a new board state, which is pretty good in some situations where we objectively need to find ways to gain a bunch of life. And Weather the Storm, because I'm being cutesy. The set's called Dragonstorm. It's kind of funny to put a storm card in here that literally says Weather the Storm. You don't have to play this if you don't want, but I think it's pretty okay. If for no other reason that the turns that you're going to drop a couple 1 or 2 cost instants or sorceries, you now gain 9 life, can be very relevant. We also put the other MDFC Revitalizing Repast in here to make it so that something's indestructible, or you can play it as a land. I put this one and Malakir Rebirth in here. I like the MDFCs. There's a couple of cards in here that we talked about that care about landfall triggers, so sometimes just being able to go, no, I'll just play the land and get the trigger can be very good. I had the 4-cost one that exiles a creature in here, but I ended up cutting it just because I have other pieces of interaction in here, and at a certain point, I would rather just have actual lands, and that was one of those points for me. Our artifacts in this deck are super boring. I hate to tell you guys, but this deck's artifacts are really boring. Keeping the budget down the way that I tried to for this deck in order to achieve the goal I was trying to achieve. The mana rocks suffer a little bit, but we have the ramp spells to try and help make up for it. We have 8 total mana rocks in this deck. It's Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, all 3 of the signets in our color pair, and all 3 of the talismans in our color pair. Room to make swaps, remove certain dragons, remove certain other cards, that kind of thing. Do with that what you will. The enchantments are also rather boring. We only have 2 of them, but they're not, like, super boring. They're rather potent in relation to some of the other cards in the deck. Blight Mound says attacking pests you control get +1/+0 and have menace. Also says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, make a pest. That part's good. It turns all of our little 1-for-1s with all of our other creatures into making things that could potentially trigger all of our other little creatures. It's a Soul Sisters package. That's what I'm looking for in relation to creatures enter, gain life. It's kind of referred to as a Soul Sisters strategy. This one just kind of takes some of the parts from an Aristocrat strategy and puts it on there as well. The other enchantment in the deck is Glacierwood Siege, and for the most part, you're probably never ever choosing any mode that isn't when you cast an instant or sorcery spell, target player mills 4 cards. There's a lot of instants and sorceries in the deck, so you'll probably use it on yourself a decent amount. You can use it on your opponents if they're using tutors that put cards on top. You can use the play lands from your graveyard. There is a fetch land package in the deck, so that would allow you to get some more landfall triggers, but the top half, the teamer selection, will give you more cards in your graveyard to actually do the delving part with, and that's kind of where I wanted to lean with that card in here. Okay, and the land section is actually kind of interesting. It's just a bunch of these style lands. I'm running all of the slow fetch lands in here because they get at least one of our land types. Bad River, Grasslands, Mountain Valley, Rocky Tar Pit. These can all get a land that is one of our basic land types. And I'm also running as many of the cheap dual lands as possible that include land types. Ice Tunnel, because it's a snow dual, it interacts with our Yorn that we mentioned. Sunken Hollow is fetchable. We've got Tangled Islet. If you have the better fetchable dual lands, they obviously fill in these slots better. But that's where the deck went from being like a $200 deck to like a $400 deck with just the inclusion of like 4 of the actual dual lands / shock lands. We ended up cutting corners a little bit in terms of like what our land base is able to do untapped wise. However, it is able to provide us a bunch of the triggers we're looking for, and with as many low-cost creatures and instants and sorceries in the deck as we have, we're already trying to be encouraged to take it a little slow anyway so that we can maximize the amount of delving we can do in any particular turn. The land base being a little bit slower will purposefully force players of this particular build to slow themselves down and pay more attention to what's going on around them and maximize the mana usage that they have going on. Because this mana base may be slow, but it will provide you the colors you need. It's very good at doing that. It'll take a little bit of time, but if you can use your 1 or 2 cost cards to help balance things out for you in the meantime, it should, in theory, pay off. And if it doesn't, you can totally replace them with the better lands. The actual fetch lands, even the surveil lands would be pretty good in here if you're looking for more ways to put cards into your graveyard. This is just a cheap mana base for this that achieves kind of what I wanted it to do. And that was it for the deck, folks. I really like Tarkir Dragonstorm. I like all the Sultai stuff. I'm in a very graveyard-y Golgari mood. Golgari is my favorite color combination, and Teval does all of the stuff I want Golgari to do plus some. This whole set makes me really, really excited to do some more graveyard stuff in the future, which has been easy to say recently. We had Duskmourn, there were even some cards in Aetherdrift that did some cool graveyard stuff. It has been a very solid year so far for folks who play graveyard decks. I'm very happy to see Teval around. I'm excited to play with a dragons themed deck that is not in the conventional color pair, and I think it looks cool. It's a really cool, very pretty art for a very cool, really pretty dragon. So that's the whole video, guys. If you liked it, go ahead and sneak on down below and click the like button. It shows me that I can keep talking about this kind of stuff, or should stop talking about this kind of stuff and kind of pivot to other things. I'm going to keep talking about Magic, but if people are tired of me talking about the same type of Magic or just showing this type of content, I need to know, and likes are one of the ways that I can learn that from you guys. If you did end up liking it, though, you should also go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you can keep watching videos as they come out. We're kind of hitting the ground running right now, pushing more content out, trying to cover more topics. So if you want to be on the ground floor of a YouTube channel that is conversation, the intent of it being conversation, well, there's no better time like the present. And speaking of the present, it is April 11th. Go get some Tarkir Dragonstorm, play with some cool dragons, and have a good day, guys. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.